Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today is going to be another great CRM COE event. So we will be speaking about CRM license management. So we have a colleague of mine or a friend of mine, and he's also a great contributor to the Salesforce COE community. And Stella Michael is going to be joining. We're going to have a very informal conversation about the license management. And it's been a hot topic for a lot of COE leaders. It's a challenge that we will be able to cover, but most of it. And please note it's just an hour, so we will cover as much as possible. If you have questions, you are always welcome to reach out to us via LinkedIn. The information is going to be shared with you. And before we get started, I would like to invite Stella. Stella, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be joining for this fun yet a very deep topic on CRM COE, which is license. I'm Stella Michael. I serve as a director in digital services overseeing CRM platforms at Corewell Health. Corewell is an integrated healthcare system and the largest employer in Michigan. We have a health plan and the care delivery system. So yeah, we've been on this journey maturing our CRM COE over the last few years and have learned some things the tough way. And I'm happy to share our experiences and insights so that others don't have to go through the same.
Thank you, Stella. So we'll get to the topic right away. So we are going to be covering just the understanding the license model and the importance, and then also we'll talk about the terminology, best practices to optimize, and we also will discuss about how do we work with Salesforce during the contract negotiation period, whether you are acquiring licenses very first time or during the renewal period. And we will also, it's a license is important, but you need to understand how do I measure the success of my entire Salesforce investments. So we will also talk about that. So we want to get to the topic, as I said. Stella, would you like to get started with the why is it so important to understand the license management and renewals?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things as a CRM COE leader is to make sure that you're being a good steward of the investments that you're making in the CRM platforms. And with that, we know that Salesforce is a big part of at least our CRM strategy and is a key platform. We also know that Salesforce is fairly expensive when compared to the other platforms that are available in the market. And for larger organizations, those costs can easily add up quickly and can cause us to go down a route where we are not able to justify the investment. And so I think it is extremely important that when we understand what our need is, ensure that we are optimizing the licenses, whether it is based on usage, effectiveness, and the business outcomes that that license is driving. With regards to compliance, it is the same thing. There are certain restrictions on how and where you could use a license, because I call that a gold mine because it just has so much of information in that. So people can easily be not just using, but abusing some of that power that they have with the access. And sometimes it's intentional, unintentional, and sometimes it may be intentional. And so you have to find a way that you are trying to use the licenses both from an organizational compliance and a Salesforce compliance, because there are certain ways how you want to use those licenses based on the purchase model that you have at Salesforce. With regards to scalability, again, it is extremely important as an organization to know where you are right now and where you see yourself, whether it's in the short term or in the long term. The nice thing about Salesforce contract conversations is they allow for that type of conversation to be built into your contract. So whether it's growth that you forecast now or you're going to see in the future, or certain usage of SKUs or features that you are going to be using now or may not be using it in the future. So a lot of that discussion should be included as you look at your licenses, and make sure you find a way to to the next point, to report out that if you don't have that audit and accurate reporting, then you will never know what you've purchased. Are you on target for that growth? Are you going above and beyond? And making sure that your entire organization, especially the leaders, understand where these licenses are being used, how they are being used, and who is using it. And ensuring that we are allowing for that transparency in why we have invested so much, and showing that business value at every step of the way is going to be key.
Thank you, Stella. I was talking to one of my close friends today in the morning. He was a VP of digital transformation, and he was saying, especially on the CRM side, you buy licenses to run your business. You don't buy licenses to report what you do in your business. So there is a huge understanding. We just don't want to add users for us to track what they do. That's not the purpose why you buy the license. You buy the license so that you can meet your business objectives.
Absolutely.
And the users are expected to follow the process and use the license to manage their activity. Anyway, that was a good conversation that I had. So having said that, security is, what does it mean, enhanced security? When you are giving wrong access or wrong type of license to a person, you are also increasing the risk of giving more or less access to the person. So understanding the type of license, Salesforce has got different types of licenses, which we'll talk about. Having the right access to the right license type is very critical. So that helps you to control your access. At the end of the day, user satisfaction and adoption. There are two types of satisfaction. There is a user satisfaction, and then there is a customer satisfaction, CX and UX. So we are specifically, user is going to be happy only when the customer that you are going to serve. So whenever you bring in the license, it is very critical to use the right type of license so that the people don't get annoyed. I don't have access to this license, or I have too much access where I can mess up the process or the data. So that is very important. Finally, you have to be able to administer. If you have multiple types of licenses, it is very hard as an admin to manage. So the burden on administrators are very important, so they can be more productive rather than more of administering the basic the activities of the users. You don't want administrators to just do the administration other than actual system administration. All right, so let's talk about the next one, the licensing terminology. So how do you address this, Stella?
Yeah, one of the important aspects of being a CRM COE leader is to understand all the different types of licenses, the terms that are used both internally and externally as you have these conversations with Salesforce. So there are several types of licenses and editions. And I'll let Velu go over a list of those types of licenses and the names, because those are a lot of details, and he's going through some of that work right now. So I will let him take that on.
So thank you, Stella. I just wanted to give maybe a plug-in, how long I've been using Salesforce. Maybe it sounds very legacy. I started a long time ago with Salesforce platform, about 22 years ago. So at that time, this editions was not an issue at all. There is a sales cloud and the service cloud. There is an enterprise level types of license, and then there is only 3 or 4 types of licenses and 2, 3 editions. Today, if you go to the website, you probably will have to spend a day for you to figure out what types of licenses available. So different types of editions, for example, professional, enterprise, unlimited, performance editions. There are different types of editions. Add-on license is another thing that we need to look at. So you buy a license, it's like buying a car. You bought a car, but after that, you will be adding navigation. So you can't add navigation without having a car. So that is a type of add-on licenses. For example, you will open the user screen. There will be some checkboxes like marketing cloud user, marketing user. Those are all add-on users. And then user license. So what is the editions and the license? So editions it's like you have a different type of cars you can buy, but the drivers who, you buy a car, but who can use the car? That is the user license. So that is the thing that we need to understand. You're buying editions, you buy a type of edition that you're buying. At the same time, when you want to give access to that edition, you need user license. And then once you buy the license, you can also enhance the user with permission sets or different sets of permission set licenses. There is a feature license and restricted license. So I'm probably going to slow down of putting that information because this is an interesting area. A feature license grants access to specific features or functionality that are included with your specific user license. So let's say you have bought enterprise edition, you bought 1,000 users. Within the 1,000 users, for few users, you can give enhanced access. That's a feature license. At the same time, when it comes to restricted licenses, and I'm not expert in that space, I'm still learning on restricted users. The restricted licenses allow the use case for it. A large company like us, during the open enrollment, we need sets of users come in for a temporary time, and then they use the system and then they get out. So we have to manage those licenses. They're like regular users, but you will activate them and immediately you deactivate them. If you do not deactivate, they are considered as a full license and you will pay for overage. Very important. Restricted licenses, it is restricted for the time in which they are assigned. And that is the key. And if you are still not clear, please talk to your AE, account executive from Salesforce. Salesforce org, multi-org strategy. It's an interesting topic that I want to mention. Like if you have multiple orgs, the important piece, if you are logging in 2 environments, 2 orgs, it is considered as 2 licenses. So let's say you have 10 admins that they will log into 10 orgs. It is basically 10 times 10, 100 licenses that you're counting. Because it's not named user. It is a named user unique to the org. So that is something you should keep that in mind. And sandboxes, when you buy sandboxes, we all know there are different types of sandboxes. Stella, I'm sure you would have come across.
Yeah.
How does the sandbox pricing work? If you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah. So usually the sandboxes you, as part of the edition that you buy, you get, one full sandbox, and then you get a Dev Pro and a bunch of Dev sandboxes. Now, the interesting thing for those of you who are fairly focused on your DevOps and CI/CD, you want to pay attention to which of those are coming for free and how you're using it. Because your path to production is going to be heavily dependent on how you set up those other sandboxes. So your full sandbox could be kind of your UAT or staging environment where, before you push the button to production, you're doing all the testing. Then you have a Dev Pro, which could be like an integrated environment where if multiple teams are working on the same org and the same code base, then you're deploying and integrating and testing it. So you have to be very intentional on one, what are the different number of sandboxes you're getting as part of your normal licenses? And then two, is that sufficient? Because some of the times you may need more, especially if you have a large number of teams, or you feel your DevOps and CI/CD strategy would be much more mature if you had yet another environment. And so you'll have to take a look at, is that good enough what we have, or do we need to purchase one more? And so we actually had to look deep into what we have and what we need and how can we purchase more, because the teams were growing and their needs were getting more sophisticated. The sandbox cost is sometimes a portion or a percentage of your total investment. So it's not like a given price. You can't say like, okay, it's the cost of an item which is consistent across any purchase. No, it's usually a percentage of your total investment that you've made, and your total number of licenses that you've purchased. So the more number of licenses you purchase, the sandbox cost would go low. If it's at a given price, the number of licenses, then your sandbox is going to cost the same. So it's a interesting pricing model there. So the more you understand the full license need, the better you are in a place to negotiate that individual sandbox need.
I agree. I can, so especially, so whenever you buy a particular edition, whether it is enterprise, I'm talking about in a large companies, enterprise performance are unlimited. So those licenses come with certain set of sandboxes. So when you want to buy additional full sandbox, it could be significant cost of your total license value for a particular org. Let's say you have 1,000 users and you're paying $1 million per year. If you get additional sandbox, it will be anywhere between 10 and 30%. It's going to cost you more. A lot of architects will easily recommend, oh, let's get one more full sandbox. We'll do another testing, regression testing. We need a sandbox. If you are doing a CI/CD pipeline, oh, there may be a great idea to get additional sandbox. So you as a COE leader, whenever you add a sandbox, it's important that you pay attention to, especially full sandbox. It costs more money. Even partial sandbox also costs good amount of money. So add-on license and API calls. So as I said, this is a very, we already covered the add-ons, but give you an example, like Marketing Cloud, Pardot, those are all add-on licenses. So when you talk about Salesforce, you buy Salesforce editions. And then if you have any other ancillary products, you should be thinking about that as well. And Salesforce is like living in an apartment. You can only, resources are shared. API calls, or if you reach certain number of API calls, beyond that, you have to pay for it. Same thing with storage. I didn't call that out here as a storage. If you exceed the storage, you pay for it. And there are so many governor limits, all those things you have to pay attention to when you do the licensing. And sometimes we think, oh, we already got everything covered. In between, let's say 6 months down the road, suddenly your requirements go up, your storage goes up. Storage cost is generally not included in the licensing. So if you're talking to Salesforce folks, make sure that what else can cost to pay for more after you sign the contract. Just write it down. You may not have to worry about it, but having that
Yeah.
knowledge is very useful for you.
I think the other thing is, as we evaluate on the data, what we've learned is, I think based on each license, you get X amount of data. I believe it's 120 MB or something per
Right.
license. So if your org has just say 10, then you're getting 120 times 10, so 1200 MB, which is usually not insufficient. So that's why if you have a small number of user licenses, but a large data that they are going to manage, you will end up paying for the extra data that you want. And it can sometimes be, expensive if you want to buy data separately like that. So I think it's important to evaluate that balance. And the same thing with sandboxes too, as we said, the lower sandboxes have a smaller data, and that's why it becomes very difficult from a CI/CD standpoint to test everything, because you only have like 1 GB or 5 GB, which is nothing when you compare it in today's day of CI/CD pipeline. So everyone feels like that full sandbox is the most important need. But as Velu said, the expenses can go up pretty high. So having an efficient DevOps and CI/CD that does not compromise on the effectiveness, but also takes into consideration the cost involved in purchasing more sandboxes is going to be extremely important.
Right. Well said, Stella. You want to take on this one?
Yeah. So with regards to the licensing strategy, I think when you start on this journey, and if you're new, trying to understand what your current business need is, and this could be across sales, marketing, customer service, and any other identity type of solutions that you may be using within Salesforce. So having that comprehensive picture of where in these multiple areas, because CRM is a journey, right? From the time you reach out to a lead through your marketing cloud, to the time we make a purchase interaction through the sales cloud, to the time that they're on your platform or on your organization and you need to serve them through your service cloud. That's the customer journey. So if you look at that customer journey and look at where in that journey is Salesforce making a difference as being the technology enabler, then that's where there is a need for your license, because those are the people who will need to touch your platform, need to touch the data that is in there, and need to touch that person who you're trying to interact with. So I think first it is important for you guys to map what does that journey look like, and then where is Salesforce going to enable that, and then look at what are the different types of requirements that you need to have, whether it's sales cloud, service cloud, marketing cloud. And it doesn't have to be all within the platform. Sometimes people use a different marketing solution, right? And that's totally okay. But once you identify your needs, then you go to the next step of saying, okay, now what does Salesforce have to offer for these needs? And then you do kind of a mapping of, here is my need and here is the offering, and then look at what does an ROI look like. When you look at that and then justify it based on some of the budget that you have, the resources and the capabilities, because you don't want to have a team that's not willing and not fully bought into the use of Salesforce. Secondly, you don't want a team that's not fully trained, that they're maximizing what you have purchased. So there's going to be a lot of other things that maximize the value of the license, but you got to have that strategy laid out upfront. Otherwise, you're going to have a tough road. Now you bought the license, people are not using it, or people who are using it don't know how to optimize it. And then you can't justify that the cost is worth the outcomes that you're receiving. So I think, it's extremely important for you to look at how are you identifying the needs, mapping it with the offerings, and then saying, does this fit within the budget and is it going to give us the ROI?
Thank you, Stella. I think you rightly said, when the business needs, this keeps coming to my mind all the time. You do not buy Salesforce to manage your activities. You buy, or any CRM system is to run your business. So when you are looking at the business needs, unfortunately, as a COE leaders, we may not have opportunity to participate in the very beginning conversation. So the sooner you get engaged with the conversation with the business leaders and technology leaders, I think you can also help them during the conversation. So when it comes to assessing the budget and resources, I look at this way. I look at this as a CFO angle. So in a large organizations, you don't see the money. we get paid, but we don't see the money because we don't sign the expense checks and we don't look at. So we don't have a preview to see what the CFO and the finance organization going through in terms of optimizing the cost, the managing the resources. So you need to keep that in mind. So every time when they say, oh, I need 300 more licenses, as a COE leader, you should be able to at least ask the right questions. And then, yes, you may have money today, but is this money that you're investing, is it going to help you grow? Or is it going to be stagnant? Or is it even going to hurt you? And then having that mindset will help you to choose the right decisions. Otherwise, it's like you have a lot of options. 10 years ago, any platform, CRM platform, Salesforce or Microsoft or SAP, they have very limited licenses and additions. Everyone has become smarter, and the customers have different needs. So sometimes you will be overwhelming. Having that mindset of, okay, it's a CFO mindset, that will help you, plus the technology intelligence or the experience that you have with the CRM, you can help choose the right licenses as a COE leader. And then see, the license is not just buy once and then forget about it. It is continuously, you need to be looking at reviewing the needs. So oftentimes we are all busy. We do too many things. And if you are anticipating 6 months down the road, there will be a opportunity to add more users into the system. You as a COE leader, start planning well in advance, asking the right questions, make sure that when they say, okay, they need this many licenses, indeed, you can give them some guidance. No, you don't need 300 full licenses. You only need 150 full license, 100 and maybe 50 the step down licenses. You don't need that platform license or something like that. If you wait till the last minute, then that means you have very less time to guide them and you have to get the job done. And so that's how I look at the licensing strategy. So it is a journey. So there are two types that we should be, if you're negotiating upfront or you are renewing it, regardless, these 6 points that you see here, they will be valuable.
Yeah, I think one of the things I try to use this analogy. In the past, when we wanted to make a phone call, you would just dial on the round dial and just talk, right? It's just a conversation. Then you had these small mobile phones that came. Now you could put your alarm in there, so you could eliminate the alarm on the side. Then you can put a reminder in there. You could eliminate your organizer. So then you started to have like a basic mobile phone. Then came the smartphone. Nobody in our lives ever knew that we wanted a smartphone, but Steve Jobs figured it out and gave us that. Now, if you have a smartphone in hand and all you're doing is the dial up and phone just for phone calls, then you're losing out on the other features like the camera, the FaceTime, the apps, and a lot of other things that you get by powering up a smartphone. And so what Salesforce has to offer is something like a smartphone. And if all you're doing is just dialing back and forth versus maximizing all the things that a smartphone can do for you, you're losing out on that investment. So I think it's important to understand all the different smart features of Salesforce and then use it to the potential.
Excellent analogy. Thank you for sharing. At the same time, when you look at that, you can't go and tell CRM platform, no, I only buy my iPhone or Apple guy, I only make phone calls, so just give me only 10% of the cost of the phone. So, so the license you are paying for Cadillac, even though you might not be using all the features. So keep that in mind.
Yes.
It's a good way to look at it. Thank you.
So I think in the way to optimize it, we wanted to get a little bit more tactical so that this will help you, because we're talking at maybe like the 5,000 feet, and maybe now we'll get into the 10,000 feet of what it means for us to optimize it, and how do you want to measure it? So the first one is determine the license level based on the features required. What does that mean? It means that you know enough about the business processes, you know enough about what is the business outcome that you're looking for from point A to point B. And based on that, you're going to set profiles and permissions. So you're really going to drill down into, all right, I have this gold mine, and what in that gold mine, which slice of it do people need access? And then go in and make sure that that's something you want to, determine and provide. Now, I will say, as a COE leader, I don't think it's fair to expect us to know every detail of your business. And that's why partnerships are critical. So if you have, I don't know, whatever you call them, super users or product owners or product managers who know enough about their areas, then you're constantly going to that user to be able to say, all right, tell us what your processes look like. Tell us which of those are centralized and decentralized. How many do you need? And are you able to justify the usage of it? So I think don't take this as a burden on yourself, but partner very closely with your business leaders and super users so that they're able to empower you with the right information, and then you can enable them with the right profiles and permissions. Once you've set that up, you want to periodically go back and review and identify, are they actually using it? And if they are, how much are they using it? Because it's, for example, one of the things that we do is we try to audit how many times people have been logging in, and then look at maybe automating the removal of a license into a pool. And when I say that, we look at the reports. If we have inactive users for maybe 30 to 60 days, we do a first check and ask, hey, so and so on your team, we do it to the manager, so and so on your team doesn't seem to be logging in. Do you need the license? So on and so forth. Some of them go on medical leave, so we justify that, so on and so forth. So you have that conversation. Then you have a process. In our case, we've automated it and it has been super helpful. It automates the removal of that license. What I like to call it is you're returning it to a pool, because when you say you're removing a license, it just leaves a bad taste in users' mouth. So I said, no, this is a pool. So you're returning the license to a pool. And when you want it later, you can always request it. But the fact is that, again, you're maximizing the licenses that you have. So those periodic audits of who is logging in, I just gave login as an example, but even if you log in and all that you do is like see a report once a month, that's not worth a full license. I think those are good conversations to ask, right? So that's one thing. And then as you do this recycling and repurposing of these licenses, you will be empowered with the conversation around, do we really need 300? As going back to Velu's example, do you need 300 licenses? If the fact that we have repurposed 100 through some of these process efficiencies, then maybe you only need 200 because you already have 100 that you've repurposed. So I think it's important to make sure that you first determine the right set, then you periodically audit, and then you repurpose and reuse the licenses that are not being fully utilized. And then if you really feel like, yeah, it feels like your forecast and what you are using is not matching, it's definitely worth a conversation with your leaders, because I think your Salesforce account executives will be willing to have this conversation with you and talk through what options do we have. I mean, every vendor don't want their licenses or their apps to be sitting like that, right? They all want their stuff to be used to the maximum potential. So they will be great partners for us in letting us know how we can repurpose them, reuse them, and maximize them.
Great point, Stella. Another thing that I would like to add here is we don't have to have all the time user access to access data from Salesforce. You can use connectors to take, if you are going to be reporting on some data and you are not going to be using Salesforce in a transaction basis, you can pull the data out of Salesforce using connectors. And also, if your function is very limited to certain things within a company, within the domain, you can opt out for a cheaper license type if you are going to be doing very specific functions. This is where we talked about the business needs at the beginning. You really need to understand the business. As a COE leader, oftentimes I feel guilty also. we are so entangled with lots of firefighting issues, but these are all the things really costing us money. So
Mhm.
what is important versus what is urgent? So this, to me, it's an important that we pay attention to the business needs and optimize who needs feature license, which the same thing, optimize. I'm repeating, or we both are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
As a COE leader, what is really costing the money for the company? License, users using the system, and the developers, architects, people who deliver or develop stuff on your CRM system. These are the direct cost to your CRM. So the license plays a major role. And oftentimes you buy the license, we just focus on building it. But where we just, especially if you have thousands of users, that's where this will apply. If it's a smaller number, anyway, you'll be paying closer attention. But the larger the number of license, especially over 1,000, you pay attention. The last one, explore and see whether there are app exchange products that can help you. And oftentimes, if you are, let's say, a large organization with tens of thousands of employees, they don't need a direct access to Salesforce. They can even do the portal. Now they call it community licenses. So if you're working for a large bank or a hospital, like where Stella works, if you want to give access to your nurses and the healthcare workers, they don't need to access Salesforce. They can access through the portal. So that's on the optimization.
Yeah, the
Contract.
one other thing, if I can just add
Oh,
in the
sorry.
previous slide, we talked a lot about the user licenses, but I think even from a platform standpoint, one of the things that we don't understand is as Salesforce releases and upgrades, there's a lot of winter release and summer release. There's a lot of new features coming in. If you're not turning on the features, you're losing out on that. So that's not a good use of those platform investment that you're making. So we try our best. This is, we're not good at it, but we try our best to go and review those release notes, look at features that could hopefully be simple turn on and then use it. Like, for example, I know when Einstein came in, like some of the search functionality was a little bit more powerful. You just needed to like turn some of those features on. So we did that, but some of them require investment from our end. If you want to use this new ability of an NBA, then you need to make some changes in your systems and make your investment to, use that feature. So I think, again, going back to those super users or experts in each of these spaces, you want to build that expertise in these clouds enough to know that as new features are being pushed out, because that's one of the biggest advantages you get with Salesforce is they carry the burden of innovation. They carry the I wouldn't say burden, but they carry the responsibility of innovating. They carry the responsibility of making sure that they're keeping up to the emerging trends in the community and in the market. And then they also carry the responsibility to informing us what's going on. And so we partner very closely with Salesforce. We invite them to our CRM COE meetings, and they come and give us like quick presentations on here's what's coming up next. Here's what it means for, in our case, Health Cloud, what will you be gaining and losing with that? And if you're not willing to have this conversation and make some serious decisions on your investments to turn on those features, again, it's not a good use of that platform and the investments. I just wanted to call out that, yes, there is a user license. There's also a platform investment that you're making. So you want to make sure that the platform is integrating seamlessly with your other ecosystem architecture and whatever infrastructure that you have. And then two, within Salesforce platform, what features can you turn on so that you can use it to the full potential?
You hit a real good points, Stella. Salesforce releases 3 times a year, as you know. See, you may have bought the licenses a while ago, thinking that feature was not there in the current release that might have been covered. So it's very important to strike the balance. And so contract with Salesforce, Stella, is something that you and I have gone through. And what's your thoughts in terms of how we should approach, whether you are renewing it or you're trying to negotiate first time.
Yeah, I think we've shared a lot of these insights already with regards to how you want to be prepared. Um, at the end of the day, this is a negotiation. And so all your negotiation 101 skills go in, right? So you need to know what you're negotiating for. You need to know what are non-negotiables, which is in the contract, what are the things, and sometimes it could be the relationship too, right? I really value Salesforce as a partner, and we don't want to make the negotiation in a way that it strains our strategic partnership. So you want to be careful in how we manage these negotiations. So one, able to understand what your current needs are and being able to um, look at what does that growth, the increase in your subscription price on renewal would look like. And then again, not missing out to Will's point, the business outcomes. You're not purchasing because you need to do something, but you want to deliver on a business outcome. And so if you're able to tie that back, then those conversations are a lot more productive with your CIOs or CFOs, as a COE leader. You also want to make sure that you are adhering to the policies and the expectations and the terms of the contract. Sometimes we go over and Salesforce, based on some of the contracts, has the ability, although we haven't seen that happen at all as much, is they can terminate and close down on certain of their licenses and the contracts because of either the way that it's being used or it's breached some of those contract terms. So again, you want to be very careful in what are you purchasing, what are your boundaries, what are some of the non-negotiables as part of that contract. It is also important to note that you cannot necessarily downsize your seat count, which is how many number of licenses you purchase per term. So your term could be a short one, like a 1 year, or a longer term, like a 3 year. So forecasting is going to be extremely important. However, like I said, it is between the COE leader, the business, and your CFO to make that good judgment and saying, how far from a forecasting standpoint do we want to invest right now? Because what you don't want to do is, purchase a license that you think you're going to be using in year 3. So is it worth to pay for that license in year 1 and year 2? I don't think so. So I think those are the types of conversations you want to ask around what is the true forecast of the short term? How much are you willing to invest right now as you sign the contract for renewal and that scaling happens, and then making sure that you're able to justify that. Now, although the seat count may not change, I think the conversation that is worth with your Salesforce account executive is to say, okay, if you're not using all of those licenses, are there other ways you can benefit from the investment that you've made in Salesforce? Again, I have seen that they've been very collaborative in those conversations. Now, you may not get everything that you want always, but at least they're always listening and being collaborative in those conversations. Billy, you want to take the rest?
Yes. As I'm listening to you, it's like my heartbeat goes up a little up. Because as a COE leader, or anybody who's got a lot of understanding about the platform, you would relate to it. But as a COE leader, it's not about the like what you see here, right? So your subscription price doesn't include the cost of developers. It's a common sense. Yeah, the reason why we call this out. So the more the licenses you buy, there is X component of the cost of development and support and maintenance. If you buy, let's say $1 million worth of license, your maintenance, support, delivery cost, it could be 3 times, it could be 2 times, it could be 4. And I heard different numbers, and I don't know. Someone said it was anywhere between $4 and $12. I have not validated that. I just want to be very clear. So if you buy a $1 worth of license, it could be anywhere $4 to $12, but I have seen up to $3. So it's important that when you buy license as a COE leader, you keep that in mind. If you have purchased the wrong Salesforce product, you still have to pay for it. You can't go and say that, hey, as soon as the contract is signed, you are committed to pay for it. And accountability. So when you say accountability for avoidable situations, somebody has to be accountable. You can't just say, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but it costs money. If it's few dollars, it's okay. But if it's a few 100,000 and millions, then it's a big number. Somebody has to be accountable. So it's not about punishing people, it's about doing a proper groundwork before you go into the negotiation stage.
Mhm.
Take the inventory, look at the needs, understand the capabilities of the platform. You, as a COE leader, you should have a good knowledge understanding. So when the negotiation period, you may not even be involved in negotiation. A lot of COE leaders be kept outside because it's always the legal team, procurement teams work together, and they're pretty good at what they do, how they negotiate. But we give that information. So that is why the contract with Salesforce, if you got to be very thorough with your um, the inventory management of what you need, why you need, what type of licenses that will be useful now and the future, all those things. Those things will help you during the negotiation. Anything you want to add on this?
Just wanted to add, as you mentioned, the point around the partnership with your procurement team. They're going to be as successful as the data that you feed into them. So empower your procurement team with all the details that they need to know. They don't have to understand the technical details of it, but from a usage standpoint, the term standpoint, the value standpoint, the SLAs, support, what are those things that will help them in the negotiation to tap into the leverage when they need to during the conversation is going to be important. So it's extremely important that you guys are in lockstep, especially during those negotiation periods, that what they know, and what they're saying, because there's also a disconnect. Sometimes they'll say something, but you wouldn't translate it. But when you're in the execution phase, somehow that this was part of the negotiation, and you find out later. So it's extremely important that you both are aligned and in lockstep, and feeding that information effectively during the negotiation stages. Yeah.
I agree. And sometimes it scares me that if I have to sign the paper contract, I mean, you have, your conscience, you have to understand what you're signing. So it's more than all this nuances. All right. Risks. So would like to go get
Yeah.
Estella on that.
Yeah. So I'm just laughing because we both are in the healthcare system, and not a day goes by without the reminder from something, an article, a meeting, a leader talking about how healthcare organizations, have the targets on their back. And so um, we have to be cognizant of the fact that the more power we have through the platform, the more responsibility we have to keep it safe and secure. And as Velu mentioned, there are different types of users. Your staff internally is one type of user, right? They are trying to do what they need to do to get their job done. So you want to start with the least restrictive access, is what I like to call, and then open up as they need more. We made some changes in how we approach this, because in the past, I think we just looked at it and we said, okay, here's the license, and then we started restricting the license. No, I think you start with the least restricted, which is what do they need, and start there, and then start opening up as the role changes or the growth happens. Secondly, the second type of user is basically your community users. So it could be, again, I'm referring back to the healthcare space. So it could be your agents who are selling your plans. It could be your providers who could be using a community portal. It could be your members who are logging in into a community portal. So there's just a different type of external users in addition to your internal users, and we have a responsibility and that trust with them to say we are not abusing the information that we have about them, because like I said, this is a gold mine. You have almost like a 360 view into a user, and you want to make sure that you're doing all that you can to restrict and have a robust security and privacy in place. When we initially started off our journey in the Salesforce ecosystem, we didn't have much of the help on the DevOps and CI/CD. So we've done a lot of the work in the last 5 years in our organization to make sure that. But looking back now, I feel like we could have done better by even investing in DevSecOps. So right now we're trying to focus on what does DevSecOps look like? How do we mature? How do we make sure we have the proper security measures in place? And then, of course, each organization has a standards and policies that we need to adhere to. So we need to make sure that we're in compliance and that we are meeting those regulation needs like any other industry. So that's kind of the big thing about data security and privacy, and making sure that whatever you're signing up from a license standpoint is in alignment with some of these security and privacy policies. With regards to vendor lock-in, I think the important thing is, because Salesforce is so big and massive, it basically is going to come and move. If it's a new purchase, it's going to come and move every of your other systems aside, because it needs that space and it needs that level of attention, both from a resource standpoint, from an architecture standpoint, and from a design standpoint. So it sits right there in the middle as a CRM. Now, whether you want to continue to use other boundary systems, that could be eliminated if you actually fully optimize Salesforce. That's one thing to note. The second thing is, like, because this is a big investment and that this is going to be a strategic platform, you want to be clear that this is something you're in for the longer term, because this is not something you plug in and plug out because it's not working. It is a lot more work for us to make sure that the investment that you're making, both from a resourcing standpoint, development, architecture, design, maintenance, upgrades, all of that is worth it, because you can't just like plug that out and say, okay, I'm going to put another one. So it's a pros and cons with any platform that you get that is massive, right? You kind of are going all in. There's goods that come with it. There's also some challenges because of the level of integrations or other point solutions you want to build within the platform. But we have a great app exchange ecosystem, and I really appreciate all the partners in the ecosystem trying to make some of those investments in making the platform more diverse for using. With regards to customization and integration complexity, I would say try to minimize customization as much as you can, because when you start trying to make it more and more complex, then you start to decrease the ability for it to scale. This is architecture 101. You want to keep it in a way that you use out of the box functionality so much, as much as you can, so that when you have a release or an upgrade, it's a quick upgrade, right? You're not having to go in and plug out things and then redo things because you've customized the platform. But no organization is is kind of have processes that can be super standard and out of the box is going to help. You will have to do some form of customization, but keep a tab on it. There's also a restriction, I believe, on how many fields and custom fields and values that you can customize as part of the platform. So being aware of that is going to be important. The integration complexity, again, I think they've matured quite a bit in how it could integrate, at least for some of you who may have been in the most recent Reinforce. Snowflake is a big partner now in that integration space. You're seeing a lot of those active partnerships that even Salesforce and both Snowflake are talking about. And those are the benefits that customers like us get, because now you're not taking on the burden of how do I integrate these two key systems. But if they have already figured out a way to have those APIs seamlessly integrate, then it's a win. But it's not going to always be the case. So depending on what investments you're making in your integrations or your cloud native platforms, you're going to have to continue to invest and pay more to make sure that your Salesforce platform is able to connect to all those key systems across your enterprise. With regards to the cost management, like I said, I think it's going to be important as you review every year. How much have the licenses that you've purchased have you used? Who is using it? And make sure that you have some kind of automation in place, because this is a really strenuous work. I mean, I'm talking one 1 to 3 orgs in my system, but like large organizations like Wales, you're talking like, I don't know, what do you have, like 15?
Yeah, we have lots of them. We have 10
Like,
plus.
yeah, so
So
you're talking like 10 plus orgs, and so that takes a lot of time to manage. So you have to find a way to build automation into that cost management, whether it's automating removal of licenses or automating reports that tell leaders saying, hey, here's the usage, or automating, find those metrics. What does a successful metric look like? And then see how you can track that trend over an year, and then make adjustments in your usage and repurposing some of those licenses. So that's kind of like what I would say. I don't know, Bailey, you want to go ahead and
yeah,
add your thoughts?
sure, absolutely. So quickly on the data security. So it is important that when you sign a contract for a cloud-based system, it meets your company security, data security and policy, like a CCPA, CDPR, all kinds of HIPAA requirements. Those things pretty much in place, but we have to keep that in mind. And when so you already covered the cost management and so on and so forth. In the interest of the time, we have few minutes left. Service level agreement, Salesforce, it's pretty, they've been in the business for 23 years, and they keep up the games well, but they do have maintenance window. So it's not 24/7 available. There is a downtime. So you need to understand, can you live with that downtime that they propose? So usually very, very low, but you still need to understand that IP, you are developing something, Salesforce is developing something, you're putting something on Salesforce. Are you okay to put your IP onto their cloud platform? It is their platform. At the end of the day, you are leasing the license. Once you terminate the contract, everything goes with it except you get your data. Compliance and legal risks. Just talk to your legal team. Make sure that you are putting sensitive information, you're putting your IP onto a third-party cloud platform. And contract negotiation, which we already talked about. So in the interest of the time, this is our last topic that we want to do. So yes, we understand the terminology. We understand to some extent how to optimize. We discussed about strategy and so on and so forth. But you buy a license for business success. You are not here to track your activities. So what are those things? So Stella, you want to take a stab at it, and then I will
Yeah,
add.
I'll be quick. So user adoption rate, we've hit that enough of time. So again, make sure that you know, what are you using it for? What business problem is it solving? And are you in need of a full license, or is it a more centralized process that you have that you can repurpose, licenses that are not of you? So that's important. ROI, I think, again, we talked about not just the cost of the license, the implementation costs go in with it, the maintenance costs go in with it, your CI/CD and DevOps costs go into it. So measure ROI and make sure that it is in alignment with your business strategy, your finance goals as an organization, and be a good steward of the dollars that you're investing in. Data quality, like I said, it's a gold mine, but it's only as good as the data. So if your data is not being kept up, whether it's from a governance standpoint, whether it's from a redundancy standpoint, yeah, it's very soon going to become a mess. So you need to have a robust data governance setup around who is doing what, where are the changes coming from, what are the different inputs, and how are you managing and balancing out the reliability of the data and the accurate reporting. So again, make sure you have the data quality as part of your governance model, because that's going to be extremely important in even monitoring the license usage. Time savings, again, a lot of your processes can be automated if you are able to effectively use Salesforce. So if you're purchasing a license, be able to justify the investment by showing how this aligns to your business efficiency, whether it is if it's a call center, your average time to handle, your transaction time, your whatever those call center metrics are, and how can Salesforce empower those metrics is going to be important. So being able to have those time savings in that is critical. Customer satisfaction, the same thing. If you're using a community portal, then on the Salesforce platform, then I think, the ease of use, the design, the performance, and things like that play a big role in your NPS scores. And then, of course, as you have different constituents that use it, your agents, your providers, your internal staff, they all have a different perspective and use. Make sure that NPS score from a customer standpoint, however you want to define those different types of customers, internal and external, are happy and getting the most out of it, and train them if they need to, empower them with the knowledge if they are missing out on some of the key aspects of the platform. You want to cover the rest?
Yes, I'll take probably 30 seconds. So you see all of them: sales performance, customer retention, employee productivity, customization, training, and support. So these are all success metrics. What does this mean? You buy, lease a platform, and at the end of the day, if somebody comes and asks, as a COE leader, give me some metrics that I want to understand. A CEO comes in and asks you, you should be able to report on all these things. And if you can't, the customer churn rate, what is attrition? If you're using Salesforce for sales and customer service, you should be able to know that. But as a COE leader, we are so, occupied with so many tactical issues, and this is very critical. So if I were to call myself a successful COE leader, I need to understand these metrics. And I need to be able to contribute and help the leaders. By doing this, you can reduce the opportunity pipeline by the speed in which you close the opportunity by 20%. That you can help. And that is what it's all about. So at the end of the day, companies think buying CRM, investing in CRM is going to solve their problem. No. This is the metrics that you should have as a COE leader. Once a year or once in 6 months, you should be able to report on. So in my organization, we are looking at this type of reports and publishing it in each arc. It's a journey. It won't happen overnight. But we are in the process of going that, take that and publish it. But publish it, you need to understand the foundation, operations, and then you can focus on the customer. So that's, having said that, it's time to wrap it up. Stella, thank you for joining. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. And first of all, and thank everyone for joining. And please stay tuned for our next event. It'll be updated on the website, and then you will also be notified. Thank you.
Thank you.